Hey, this storm went down about 8 months ago, and I'm finally ready to tell the whole story. My girlfriend of 3 years turned out to be using me as her personal bank account while planning her exit strategy with her married professor. She thought she was so much smarter than the dumb HVAC guy. Turns out this dumb HVAC guy knows how to follow a paper trail better than her genius professor could cover one up. Here's how it all unraveled, and why karma hit harder than a Texas summer without AC. I'm Sam, 32, male, and I own a mid-sized HVAC company in North Dallas. Started from absolutely nothing. Grew up in a trailer park in East Texas with a single mom who worked double shifts at a truck stop diner just to keep us fed. When I was 16, I started working weekends for a local HVAC contractor named Big Jim, who took pity on me and taught me the trade. Spent my senior year of high school crawling through attics and learning to braze copper lines while my classmates were worrying about prom. After graduation, I worked for Jim full-time for 6 years, living in a studio apartment that was basically a closet with a hot plate, saving every penny I could. Jim was old school, paid cash, taught me business along with the technical work, and when he retired, he sold me his customer list for $15,000. That became the foundation for my own company. I started Sam Climate Solutions in 2018, working out of a beat-up Ford van I bought for $8,500. First year was brutal. 70-hour weeks, sleeping 4 hours a night, living on peanut butter sandwiches and gas station coffee. But I was determined to build something real. By year 2, I'd hired my first employee. By year 3, I had 4 guys and was bidding commercial jobs. Now I've got 8 full-time employees, a 4,000-square-foot shop with 6 service vehicles, and we clear about $380,000 annually after expenses. We handle everything from residential service calls to major commercial installations. Last month, we landed a $200,000 contract to install climate control systems for a new medical complex. Not bad for a trailer park kid who started with a borrowed toolbox. The business model is simple. Show up on time, fix it right the first time, charge fair prices, and treat customers like family. We're certified in everything: refrigeration, electrical, gas lines, ductwork design, building automation systems. I've got licenses in Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. My employees make good money with full benefits, and we've got a 6-month waiting list for major installations. I bought my house 4 years ago, a solid 2,400-square-foot place in Plano, with a 3-car garage I converted into a workshop. Nothing fancy, but it's got good bones and room to grow. The mortgage runs $2,800 monthly, which is manageable, and I've been paying extra principal every month. I've got about $125,000 in business savings, another $75,000 in personal accounts, and a retirement portfolio that's actually growing. My financial advisor calls me the most disciplined 32-year-old I've ever worked with. My dad walked out when I was 8. So I learned early that the only person you can count on is yourself. Built credit slowly, never carried debt except the house and business loans. And every major purchase gets researched for months before I pull the trigger. I drive a 2019 F-250 crew cab that I bought used with 40,000 miles. Reliable, practical, paid off in 3 years instead of 6. Could I afford something fancier? Sure, but trucks are tools, not status symbols. That philosophy extends to everything in my life. I wear Wrangler jeans and Carhartt shirts to work because they last. I eat lunch at local diners instead of trendy spots because the food's better and cheaper. I cut my own grass, change my own oil, and fix what breaks instead of replacing it. Mom always said, "Sam, champagne taste on a beer budget leads to bankruptcy." And that lesson stuck. That's where I met Jessica, 26, female. She was working part-time at the university bookstore while pursuing her master's in educational psychology. We met when I was doing emergency AC work at the campus center during a July heat wave. Outside temperature hit 108 degrees, and their 20-year-old system had finally given up. She was manning the information desk, looking completely miserable in the 90-degree building, and made some joke about how I was basically a superhero for bringing cold air back to suffering students. She was beautiful, auburn hair, green eyes, always dressed like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Smart too, or so I thought. Could discuss psychology theory, educational policy, research methodology. During our first few dates, she seemed genuinely interested in my business, asked thoughtful questions about entrepreneurship and growth strategies. She even visited the shop once, watched me explain a complex commercial installation to a client, and said she was impressed by how I made complicated things sound simple. The first red flag should have been her living situation. 26 years old, graduate student working part-time retail, but living in a luxury apartment complex that ran $1,800 monthly, plus utilities. The Meridian at City Place, Marble countertops, stainless appliances, resort-style pool, the works. When I asked how she afforded it on bookstore wages, she said her parents helped out with expenses. I'd met her parents, Rob and Linda from Shreveport. He was a city maintenance supervisor. She was a middle school principal. Nice people, salt of the earth, but definitely not luxury apartment money. Their own house was a modest 1,200 square foot place they'd been paying on for 20 years. Something didn't add up, but I figured maybe they were sacrificing for their daughter's education. Jessica had expensive taste in everything. Designer clothes from Nordstrom, $200 jeans, $80 face creams, organic everything at the grocery store. Her credit cards were maxed out. I saw the statements when she left them lying around, but she'd wave off my concerns with, "I'll figure it out when I graduate and get a real job." She had this weird confidence that everything would magically work out because she was educated and deserved better things. 6 months into dating, she suggested moving in together. Made financial sense, she claimed. She could save on rent and pay off her credit cards faster. I was hesitant at first, but she made compelling arguments about building our future together and how much easier it would be to coordinate our schedules. That's when the real expenses started. Jessica needed a proper workspace for her graduate studies. So, we converted the spare bedroom into her office. She picked out everything: a $1,200 executive desk, an $800 ergonomic chair, custom bookshelves for $900, a filing system for $300, and a $200 desk lamp that she claimed was essential for preventing eye strain during long research sessions. Total $3,200 that came out of my business account. She needed a reliable car for her unpaid internship at a counseling center. Her old Honda had 180,000 miles and was burning oil, so we went car shopping. I suggested a certified pre-owned Camry or Accord, reliable, affordable, good resale value. But Jessica fell in love with a brand new 2022 Honda Accord touring with all the bells and whistles, leather seats, navigation, premium sound system, $32,500 after taxes and fees. Her credit was garbage, 580 score with $18,000 in maxed out cards. So I had to co-sign. The payments were $485 monthly, plus $180 for full coverage insurance, since she had a speeding ticket and a fender bender on her record. I made the payments because her part-time income barely covered her minimum credit card payments. She needed appropriate professional clothes for conferences and presentations. Over the next year, we made monthly trips to Nordstrom, Banana Republic, and J.C. Crew. Business suits, blouses, shoes, accessories, easily $3,000 in outfits, all charged to my credit card because hers were maxed out. She'd say things like, "Sam, when I'm a licensed therapist, we'll both benefit from me looking professional. This is an investment in our future." But the biggest expense was her tuition. Jessica had been paying out-of-state rates, $17,500 per semester, and had already accumulated $65,000 in student loans for her bachelor's degree. When she started her master's program, she came to me crying about how financial stress was affecting her studies. "Sam, I can't focus on my thesis when I'm worried about money constantly. This degree is going to change our whole future." Licensed therapists start at $75,000, and with my research focus, I could be making 6 figures within 5 years. She showed me salary data, job projections, career advancement paths, made it sound like paying for her education was the smartest investment I could make. I was an idiot. I loved her, believed in her potential, and wanted to support her dreams. So, I paid her tuition for 2 semesters, $35,000 out of my business savings. She promised to pay me back once she graduated and started working. The arrangement was simple. I'd handle all the major expenses while she focused on her studies, and she'd manage the household and support my business growth. In practice, she spent most days at the university studying while I worked 50-hour weeks and came home to a messy house and DoorDash containers. When I'd mention the household chores, she'd get defensive. "Sam, I'm not your maid. I'm working toward a professional degree that requires intense focus. My education has to come first right now." But she'd say it while wearing a $300 Lululemon outfit I'd bought her. Sitting in the office I'd furnished, typing on the $2,800 MacBook Pro I'd purchased for her research needs. The relationship dynamic shifted after she moved in. Instead of the grateful, affectionate girlfriend who appreciated my hard work, she became entitled and critical. She'd make comments about my work clothes, suggesting I needed to dress more professionally for client meetings. She'd wrinkle her nose when I came home dirty from crawling through attics or working around industrial equipment. Maybe you should consider hiring more people to do the actual labor work, she suggested once. You're the business owner now. You should focus on management and sales, not getting your hands dirty. I tried explaining that HVAC work requires hands-on troubleshooting, that my customers valued my personal expertise, that I couldn't build relationships sitting in an office. She'd nod like she understood, but her expression said she thought I was making excuses for being unwilling to elevate myself. Her friends from graduate school started coming around more often, a pretentious bunch who'd discuss socioeconomic paradigms and educational inequities while drinking $20 bottles of wine I'd paid for. They'd politely acknowledge me when I'd get home from work, but their conversations would halt until I went upstairs to shower. I got the distinct impression they saw me as the blue-collar boyfriend who didn't belong in their intellectual discussions. One evening I overheard one of them, Melissa, a sociology doctoral candidate, say to Jessica, "You're so lucky to have someone who can support your academic goals. Not everyone finds a partner willing to invest in their education." The way she said partner made it sound like sponsor or benefactor. Jessica's thesis advisor was Dr. Richard Whitmore, a 45-year-old psychology professor who specialized in educational assessment and testing. She talked about him constantly, how brilliant he was, how he was revolutionizing the field, how lucky she was to work under his guidance. She'd stay late at the university for research meetings with Dr. Whitmore, sometimes not coming home until 10 or 11 p.m. When I'd ask about these marathon sessions, she'd explain how complex her research was, how Dr. Whitmore demanded perfection from his students, how she was working on something that could change everything in educational psychology. Her thesis was about culturally responsive assessment methodologies for diverse student populations, a mouthful that she'd recite like it was going to cure cancer. I trusted her completely. More fool me. The first real warning sign came during a university fundraising event that Jessica insisted we attend. I bought a $500 table sponsorship and spent $600 on a suit that met her approval, charcoal gray from Men's Warehouse that she picked out because it made me look more professional. The event was full of professors, graduate students, donors, and local business leaders. Jessica introduced me to her academic circle as Sam, who runs his own HVAC company. That introduction always bothered me. Not my boyfriend Sam or Sam who built a successful business from scratch, just Sam, who runs HVAC. Like it was a temporary job instead of a career I'd built from nothing. When people asked follow-up questions about my work, Jessica would quickly redirect the conversation to her thesis research or Dr. Whitmore's latest publication. Dr. Whitmore was there with his wife Elena, a stylish woman in her early 40s who looked bored by the academic crowd. When Jessica introduced us, Whitmore barely acknowledged me before turning his full attention back to her. "Jessica's been doing exceptional work on her thesis," he told the group around us. "Really groundbreaking research that could reshape how we approach educational assessment for diverse student populations. I've encouraged her to consider pursuing doctoral studies after graduation." Jessica beamed under his praise. I noticed how she positioned herself closer to him throughout the evening, how she laughed just a little too enthusiastically at his comments, how she kept finding excuses to touch his arm during conversations. When he spoke, she hung on every word like he was delivering divine wisdom. During the drive home, I mentioned that she seemed to have a particularly close relationship with her advisor. "Of course, we're close," she snapped. "He's guiding my entire academic future. This thesis determines whether I get into a top doctoral program or settle for some mediocre counseling job at a community health center." "Doctoral program? I thought you were going to start working after graduation so we could begin planning our future together." She waved her hand dismissively. "Plans evolve, Sam. Dr. Whitmore thinks I have real potential for academic research. A PhD would open so many more doors: university positions, research grants, consulting opportunities. We'd be talking about a completely different income level. More years of school, more tuition payments, more excuses for why she couldn't contribute financially to our relationship." 3 months before her scheduled graduation, things started getting weird. Jessica's schedule became even more erratic. She'd leave early for research meetings and come home late smelling like expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. She started dressing differently, more sophisticated, more expensive. When I complimented a new dress, she said, Dr. Whitmore had suggested she needed to present more professionally for upcoming academic conferences. She also became secretive about her phone and laptop. Previously, she'd leave both lying around without concern. Now she'd close her laptop quickly when I entered the room and kept her phone face down during dinner. When I asked about it, she said her research contained sensitive data that required confidentiality protocols. The expenses continued escalating. New professional wardrobe for conference presentations, $2,200. Registration fees for academic conferences, $1,800. Research materials and books, $900. A new laptop because her current one was too slow for data analysis, $3,200. Every request came with detailed explanations about how essential these items were for her academic success. I started noticing other changes too. Jessica became more critical of my work, my friends, my interests. When my buddy Jake invited us to a Rangers game, she declined and suggested I expand my social circle beyond people who work with their hands. When I mentioned wanting to take a weekend fishing trip with my employees as a team-building exercise, she said it sounded unprofessional and might hurt my business reputation. Her academic friends started treating me differently too. Instead of polite acknowledgement, I got condescending questions about my long-term career goals and whether I planned to continue in the trades indefinitely. One particularly obnoxious doctoral candidate named Bradley asked if I'd ever considered transitioning to the management side of the HVAC industry, as if running my own company wasn't management. The final straw came when I overheard a phone conversation that changed everything. I'd come home early from a service call that got canceled. The customer's unit started working again before I arrived, which happens sometimes, and heard Jessica talking in her office. The door was partially closed, but her voice carried clearly down the hallway. I know it's complicated, but Sam is just my financial placeholder until everything gets sorted out with Elena. He's been useful for paying my expenses and keeping me stable, but obviously this isn't permanent. I froze in the hallway, not believing what I was hearing. Richard, I've been patient, but I need to know we're actually moving forward with our plans. I can't keep pretending with Sam much longer. It's getting harder to act grateful when he talks about our future together and expanding the business. My blood went cold. No, he doesn't suspect anything. He's too busy working to notice what's really happening. Besides, he's not exactly the type to pick up on subtle social cues. Blue-collar guys aren't known for their emotional intelligence or sophisticated thinking. She actually laughed, genuinely laughed at whatever Dr. Whitmore said in response. Trust me, the moment you're free from Elena, I'm done here. I just need to make sure I have somewhere stable to land financially, and, obviously, I'll need help transitioning until I can access my inheritance. Inheritance? What inheritance? Jessica had never mentioned any family money beyond her parents' modest help with expenses. I'll see you tonight at the Adolphus. Sam thinks I'm studying late at the library again. He never questions my academic schedule. It's like having the perfect alibi built into our relationship. I quietly backed away and left the house, my mind reeling. 3 years together, $50,000 plus in tuition, car payments, and expenses, all while she saw me as a financial placeholder and mocked my intelligence behind my back. I drove to my office and sat in the parking lot for 2 hours, processing what I'd heard. Jessica wasn't just cheating. She was running a long con, using me to fund her lifestyle while planning her exit strategy with her married professor. And apparently there was family money she'd never mentioned, which explained her entitled attitude about money. That night, I went into full investigation mode. I'd built a successful business by being methodical and thorough, and I applied those same skills to uncovering the truth about my relationship. First, I installed a discreet recording app on our shared iPad that Jessica used for research. Completely legal since it was my device, my internet plan, my house. The app captured audio whenever the device was activated, storing everything in a cloud account she didn't know about. Next, I started checking our phone records through my account portal. Jessica's line showed hours of conversations with Dr. Whitmore, often late at night when she claimed to be studying. There were also frequent calls to an unknown number that a reverse lookup revealed belonged to the Adolphus Hotel downtown, a luxury property where rooms started at $300 per night. Then I started following the money more carefully. I requested detailed statements for all the accounts and credit cards I'd been helping her with. What I found was shocking. Beyond the obvious expenses I knew about, there were charges at expensive restaurants, spa treatments, Victoria's Secret, jewelry stores, and luxury hotels, all while she claimed to be broke and stressed about finances. I also started doing background research on Dr. Whitmore himself. His university bio claimed impressive credentials: a PhD from Columbia, department head, published researcher with expertise in educational assessment. But when I dug deeper through academic databases and Google Scholar, I found some interesting patterns. Dr. Whitmore's publications were impressive in quantity but suspicious in quality. Many appeared in obscure journals that required payment for publication rather than rigorous peer review. His research citations were mostly self-references or quotes from colleagues at the same university. For someone supposedly revolutionizing the field, His work had remarkably little impact outside his immediate circle. I also found some concerning information through LinkedIn and professional networks. Several former graduate students had left negative reviews about his mentoring style, though they were carefully worded to avoid direct accusations. There were hints about inappropriate relationships and favoritism that made me wonder if Jessica was just the latest in a pattern. Over the next 2 weeks, I gathered evidence systematically while maintaining normal behavior around Jessica. The iPad recordings were particularly damning, capturing multiple conversations between her and Dr. Whitmore that revealed the full scope of their relationship and future plans. Recording number 1, Jessica calling Dr. Whitmore from our kitchen while I was supposedly at work. Richard, I'm getting tired of pretending to be grateful every time Sam pays for something. Yesterday, he mentioned wanting to look at engagement rings after I graduate, and I nearly threw up in my mouth. Be patient, darling. Elena's lawyers are being difficult about the custody arrangement, but we're making progress. The private investigator confirmed what we needed about her spending habits. I know, but it's getting harder to fake enthusiasm. When he talks about expanding his little AC business or buying a bigger house together, I want to scream. This isn't the life I'm meant for, Richard. I have a master's degree. Remember what we discussed about your family situation? Your grandmother's trust fund becomes accessible when you turn 30, which is only 18 months away. Between that and my sabbatical position at Oxford, we'll have the financial freedom to start fresh. Trust fund, Oxford sabbatical. This was the first I'd heard of any of this. Recording number 2, Jessica in her office, after one of their research meetings. The suite at the Adolphus was perfect tonight. I just wish we didn't have to sneak around like this much longer. Soon, darling. I've got the Oxford visiting professor position confirmed for next fall. We can start fresh in England while Elena fights over assets she'll never get. The beauty of academic sabbaticals is they're difficult to challenge legally. What about Sam? He's going to be completely devastated when I leave. Part of me feels bad. He really thinks we're building a future together. He works so hard for everything. Jessica, you can't let misplaced guilt derail your actual future. You're meant for intellectual pursuits and academic excellence, not playing house with a tradesman. We have to be realistic about class compatibility and long-term potential. The word tradesman hit like a physical blow. I'd built a business that employed 8 people and generated nearly $400,000 annually. But to them, I was just a tradesman. Recording number 3, the most damaging conversation recorded just days before I planned to confront her. Richard, I told my study group about our plans yesterday during our research meeting. They think it's so romantic. The professor and his star student running away together like something out of a movie. What exactly did you tell them? We need to be careful about discretion until Elena's situation is resolved, just that I've been playing the long game with Sam while waiting for you to get free. Sarah asked how I managed to keep him interested in paying for everything for so long. And I said, it's amazing what men will fund when they think they're investing in a future with you. They both laughed. Actual laughter at my expense. I have to admit, using his money to look good for you has been the perfect irony. That dress you loved at the faculty dinner, Sam paid for it. The jewelry I wore to the conference in Austin, also Sam, even my thesis, research materials, and conference fees. He thinks he's funding my education, but really he's funding our relationship. I had to stop the recording and step outside. The casual cruelty in her voice was worse than the infidelity itself. Armed with this evidence, I started planning my response. This wasn't just about a cheating girlfriend anymore. This was about systematic fraud, a professor abusing his position with students, and potentially federal crimes. I contacted my lawyer first, a guy named Tom Rodriguez, who'd helped me with business contracts and incorporation. I explained the situation and asked about my options for recovering the money I'd paid for Jessica's tuition and expenses. Tom was fascinated by the recordings and said I had a solid case for civil fraud, especially with documented evidence of intentional deception. Sam, this isn't just relationship drama, Tom said after reviewing the evidence. She systematically misrepresented her intentions and financial situation to extract money from you. That's textbook fraud. The recordings make it impossible for her to claim misunderstanding. Then I started researching Dr. Whitmore more aggressively. I reached out to a buddy from high school who worked in university administration at UT Dallas and asked him to run Dr. Whitmore's credentials through unofficial channels. What came back was eye-opening. Dr. Whitmore's Columbia PhD was legitimate, but there were gaps in his employment history and questions about his research integrity. More importantly, my friend discovered that Dr. Whitmore had been running a side business, selling fake transcripts and diplomas to international students who needed credentials for visa applications. He'd been using his university access to create official-looking documents that would pass initial scrutiny, but weren't backed by actual coursework. This was massive. Not only was he cheating on his wife and manipulating students, but he was committing federal fraud that could result in serious prison time. I spent another week gathering evidence about Dr. Whitmore's illegal activities, cross-referencing student enrollment records with visa applications and transcript requests. The pattern was clear. He was generating thousands of dollars monthly by selling fake credentials to desperate international students. Finally, I had everything I needed. Financial records showing Jessica's systematic deception, recordings proving the affair and their plans to defraud me, evidence of Dr. Whitmore's federal crimes. Time for the confrontation that would end everything. The moment came on a Thursday evening when Jessica returned from another late study session at 10:30 p.m., smelling like expensive cologne and wearing a smug expression that told me she just spent hours at the Adolphus with her professor. "How was the library?" I asked casually, looking up from my laptop where I'd been organizing my evidence files. Exhausting, but productive. Dr. Whitmore is really pushing me to excel on this final thesis draft. He says it could determine my entire academic future and potential for doctoral programs. I'm sure he's very invested in your future success. She missed the sarcasm completely. He really is, Sam. I'm so lucky to have a mentor who believes in my intellectual potential and sees what I could accomplish, with the right opportunities. I closed my laptop and looked directly at her. "Jessica, we need to have a serious conversation." Something in my tone made her defensive immediately. "If this is about household responsibilities again, Sam, I've explained that my thesis deadline. It's not about chores, it's about your grandmother's trust fund." Her face went white. "What trust fund?" "I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out my phone and played the recording. "Remember what we discussed about your family situation? Your grandmother's trust fund becomes accessible when you turn 30, which is only 18 months away." Jessica's mouth opened and closed silently. "Then you recorded me? That's completely illegal. You can't use private conversations. Actually, it's perfectly legal. This is my house, my internet connection, my iPad. All completely legal under Texas law." I played another clip. I told my study group about our plans yesterday. They think it's so romantic. The professor and his star student running away together. She sat down heavily on the couch, her face cycling through shock, fear, and calculation. "Sam, I can explain everything. It's not what it sounds like. Can you explain calling me your financial placeholder? Can you explain using my money to buy clothes and jewelry for your dates with your married professor? Can you explain 3 years of systematic lies while I funded your entire lifestyle? You don't understand our relationship. What Richard and I have is real intellectual connection. It's not some sordid affair, really, because it sounds like fraud, which coincidentally is what your boyfriend specializes in." She looked genuinely confused. "What do you mean?" I pulled out a folder of documents I'd prepared. Dr. Richard Whitmore has been selling fake diplomas and transcripts to international students for the past 3 years, using university resources to commit federal immigration fraud. I've got documentation going back 36 months showing the pattern. Jessica shook her head frantically. "That's not true. Richard would never do anything illegal. He's a respected professor." "Richard is looking at federal charges that carry 10 to 15 years in prison. Jessica, and anyone associated with his schemes, including girlfriends who helped launder money through student accounts, goes down with him." Her face showed genuine terror now. "I never helped with any illegal activities. I don't know anything about fake diplomas. Maybe not directly, but the money he's been spending on hotel rooms and expensive dinners, that's proceeds from federal crimes. The gifts he's bought you, also crime proceeds. Legally speaking, you've been receiving stolen goods." I let that sink in for a moment. "Jessica, he's using you just like he used those international students. You think you're special, but you're just another mark in his long-term con game." She tried the emotional manipulation approach. "Sam, you don't understand our connection. What Richard and I have transcends conventional relationships. We're intellectual equals working toward. You're a naive graduate student who fell for a middle-aged criminals. He's married. He's a felon. And in about 12 hours, he's going to be under federal investigation." That's when she finally broke down, but not with remorse or apology, with pure rage that her perfect plan was falling apart. "You're destroying everything. Richard and I were meant to be together. You're just a small-minded man who can't understand what real intellectual connection looks like. And you're a fraud who spent 3 years lying to someone who loved you. Pack your things, Jessica. You have until Sunday to get out of my house. You can't kick me out. I live here. I have rights. No, you don't. You're not on the lease. You don't pay rent. You've never contributed to mortgage or utilities. And you're no longer my girlfriend. You're a guest who's overstayed her welcome. She tried every manipulation tactic in the book. Crying, screaming, bargaining, threatening legal action, promising to end things with Dr. Whitmore if I'd give her another chance. None of it worked. I'd already transferred $75,000 from our joint accounts into my personal account. Money I could prove I'd deposited through business income. I'd also called Honda Financial and reported the Accord stolen, since Jessica had been driving a car titled in my name without permission for weeks while planning to abandon me. The repo company picked it up from the university parking lot that Friday afternoon. Campus security cameras captured Jessica's meltdown when she discovered her car missing. Over the weekend, I helped Jessica pack her belongings while maintaining complete emotional detachment. 3 years of relationship reduced to cardboard boxes and plastic bags. Her parents drove down from Shreveport to help move her stuff and were mortified when I explained the situation. "We had no idea she was taking advantage of your generosity like this," her mother said, while folding Jessica's expensive clothes. "We raised her to be grateful and honest. This isn't the daughter we thought we knew." Her father shook my hand firmly. "Sam, you seem like a good man who worked hard to build something real. I'm ashamed that my daughter treated you this way. You deserved better. They were decent people who'd raised a selfish daughter. Sometimes that happens despite best efforts." The real fireworks started when I called the federal fraud hotline and reported Dr. Whitmore's diploma mill operation. I provided copies of all my evidence, not just the recordings about his relationship with Jessica, but the documented pattern of fake credentials I'd uncovered through my investigation. Federal investigators moved fast within 5 days. Dr. Whitmore was suspended from the university pending investigation. His office was sealed. His computer and files were seized. And several international students who'd purchased fake credentials were arrested for immigration fraud. The local news picked up the story immediately. University professor arrested in federal fraud investigation. Dr. Whitmore's mugshot was all over social media within hours, along with details about his fake diploma operation and estimated profits of over $200,000 annually. Jessica called me hysterically after seeing the news coverage. "Sam, you destroyed him. Richard's entire career is over. How could you do this to us?" I reported a criminal to federal authorities. "Jessica, the fact that he was your boyfriend doesn't make fraud legal or acceptable. But what about Oxford? What about our plans for the future?" "Oxford was probably another lie, just like everything else he told you to keep you compliant. Turns out I was exactly right. When federal agents contacted Oxford University, they had no record of any sabbatical offer or application from Dr. Whitmore. He'd fabricated the entire story to keep Jessica believing in their future together while he figured out how to escape his legal problems. The trust fund was also complete fiction. I contacted Jessica's parents directly and asked about her grandmother's estate. They looked confused and explained that Jessica's grandmother had died 10 years ago, leaving behind costume jewelry and $3,000 in a checking account. There was no trust fund, no inheritance, no family money whatsoever. Everything had been lies designed to keep Jessica hopeful and compliant, while Dr. Whitmore used her for emotional validation and probably to help launder his illegal income through her student accounts. The aftermath was swift and brutal for both of them. Dr. Whitmore was indicted on 14 federal charges, including wire fraud, immigration fraud, and money laundering. He posted bail using his house as collateral, but the university fired him immediately and revoked his tenure. His academic career was permanently destroyed before the trial even started. His wife Elena filed for divorce within 1 week of his arrest, taking their children and most of their assets. She'd apparently been investigating his behavior for months and had documented evidence of multiple affairs beyond Jessica. The divorce was finalized in record time, leaving Dr. Whitmore with legal bills and no steady income. Jessica tried desperately to finish her thesis with a different advisor, but the scandal made it impossible. Her research had been contaminated by association with Dr. Whitmore's fraudulent activities, and the University Ethics Committee suggested she might want to start over with a completely new thesis topic and advisor. Without my financial support, she couldn't afford to continue school. Her credit cards were maxed out, her parents couldn't help with tuition, and no legitimate advisor wanted to work with a student connected to a federal fraud case. She moved back to Shreveport and took a job at a local social services office, making $28,000 annually, a far cry from the six-figure therapeutic career she'd planned. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding my life and my business. Eliminating Jessica's expenses freed up over $4,500 monthly that I reinvested into company growth. I hired 3 more technicians, bought 2 additional service trucks, and expanded into commercial refrigeration and building automation systems. The business grew 45% that year. Turns out eliminating financial dead weight applies to both relationships and balance sheets. I also started a retirement matching program for my employees and bought a small office building for the company headquarters. 6 months after the federal trial ended, Dr. Whitmore was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Jessica contacted me one final time through LinkedIn. She'd been fired from her social services job for inappropriate relationships with clients and was looking for a short-term loan to get back on her feet while pursuing new opportunities. I didn't respond. Some people never learn from their mistakes, and enabling them doesn't help anyone.